have guests on Dom Cardone, former IFBB Pro. I'm sure you bodybuilders out there listening know the name. They're going to be pretty stoked to hear this conversation. You're one of the youngest guys to ever get an IFBB Pro card. Correct?
Yeah, the youngest. Well, at the time, I was the youngest to ever win the heavyweight class, especially the year after Cody Montgomery beat that. But yeah, before me, it was Barry DeMay back in, I think, 1988.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So kind of take me back before all of that. What was going on in your life that made, a young guy look at bodybuilding and say, that's the thing I want to do?
So I was 15. I was getting ready to, 15, I believe, getting ready to go into sophomore year of high school. I was playing football, played my whole life. They got us in the weight room at like the tail end of the school year. So after like a month of being in the weight room, 3 weeks, they were like, okay, see you next year. Right. So then my dad brought me to Gold Gym to get signed up. Man, my whole life, I've always been big into researching and learning everything I possibly could about whatever I was getting into. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a professional gamer. I needed to know everything about it. Same thing with football. I go down the rabbit hole once I became obsessed with something. And on YouTube, I remember this very vividly, seeing Ronnie Coleman leg press, I think it was 2,300 pounds or 2,400 pounds, whatever it was. You know the video.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I want to do that. But I didn't know what there was competitive bodybuilding. Like I never fathomed the thought of stepping on the stage in a thong, tanned up. So then I saw videos of Jay Cutler training. So I'm like, man, I want to get into this. So I started learning about diet and training pretty quickly. I mean, I think I put on almost 30 pounds within like 2 months. It wasn't the cleanest weight, but it happened pretty quick. And then it was actually AJ Sims, who was Cement Factory. He was 19 at the time. I think he was turning 20. I found him at bodybuilding.com. And I just wanted to lose weight. I just wanted to have abs. And I saw that AJ competed. And I was like, man, I think I'm going to, compete one day. And, that was it. I competed for the first time at 16 and I was like bitten by the bug.
That's funny, bodybuilding.com, how times have changed so much since then. So you have a bit of you're a bit obsessive with habits. Like you're totally all in about anything you kind of do.
And it's a two-edged sword, right? I have to either be like 110% in or like I don't want anything to do with it. So like, there are some people that could be, whatever they get into, like they master it. I have to really be all in on it, and learn everything about it, learn about the people that came before me, the history of it, the inner working, whatever it is, doesn't matter what it is. Like it was bodybuilding. And then, really when I left bodybuilding, it turned into jujitsu and then now MMA. So it's like, so I'm very careful too about, finding new hobbies because I'm like, okay, at what cost financially and mentally and time wise is this going to come from? So yeah, naturally I can get very obsessive.
Yeah, totally. I have to be very careful with what you pick now because if you pick something, you're like all in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by 2014, he win the NBC National Heavyweight class, turned pro at 21, correct?
Yeah, I competed throughout my teenage years. In USA when I was 18, in Nashville I was 19. Took some time off to grow. Did the Eastern USA 2014. And then Chad Nichols, who was my coach at the time, he's like, you should go to nationals. And I didn't have any, I didn't want to go to nationals. I was 25 or 26. Cause you remember back then, like was not really a thought until like your mid to late 20s. So he told me to do it. And I went there with like no expectations. I didn't go there expecting to win. I'm like, just going to go there, look my best. I wasn't even like nervous in any way, shape, or form. And I, just happened to win. And I was 21 at the time.
Yeah, that's wild. Most guys, at that age are still trying to figure out what division to compete in, let alone win in national heavyweight. That's pretty badass. You had a lot of confidence walking into the show, though, it sounds like.
So that's the thing too, like coming off of the Eastern USA, like back then the Eastern USA, usually whoever won the Eastern USA in New York, we usually won the nationals, right? And so that was a very big deal. Those classes back then in the bodybuilding class were very, I don't even think there was classic back then. And physique was just in its beginning phases. But yeah, so if you won the Easterns, like you really back then, you really should go to the Nationals. So yeah, I was confident going in because I was happy I won the overall at the Easterns. But I didn't go there thinking I didn't go to nationals being like, "Oh, I'm gonna win this." I was like, "I'm gonna show up at my best," and I knew for a fact I did everything in my power to be my best. I would never ever astray off plan. Like everything was the time. My days were completely programmed. Went to bed the same time every day, woke up the same time every day, trained the same time every day, ate the same time every day. So one day I was like, yeah, I was confident, but I'm like, I was in my head too. It would be cool to get top five, but then when you move right to the middle, first call out, it was shocking, but it just kind of just happened. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't. Yeah, there was no nerves going into there. I remember it was funny you bring that up because that was my first and only national level show, and I was backstage pumping up, and you take your clothes off, and on my left I had Alexis Roulon. You remember him?
No,
So Alexis won the overall. He won the super heavies. He went to the Olympia one year with AJ. He was a freak. Him
really.
and I kept in touch like for years because him and my dad competed together a few years before that. So I had on my left Alexis Malone. On my right, I had Michael Lockett when we're pumping up backstage. And I remember looking to my left, looking at Alexis, looks at me, he goes, I'm looking at his arm. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? So I look at Michael Lockett. And then I'm just like, at this point in my head, I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not going to win. Like, it's whatever. Like, I didn't care. Like, I was 21 years old. You know what I'm saying? John
Mhm.
Meadows walks in the room. The room goes fucking silent. Everybody like turns around to like see what John's doing. And he goes in the corner and you could hear a pin drop in here. Meanwhile, that place was a big auditorium. And you turn around, and John like takes his pants off and just like kind of like moons everyone. And like you just see his hamstrings and his glutes. And we were in the same class. I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, damn, all right, I guess it's cool to be here. Like I started immediately thinking about sushi. Like I wasn't even like, oh, I'm upset. And I was the last person in my class. I was like, what? There was like 34 or 35 people. So I remember being lined up and just looking down this hallway. And I'm just like in my head, I'm like, oh my God, these guys are all huge. Like they're all bigger than me. And I'm like, all right, it'll be cool to can you hear me? Oh yeah, you got me. I'm like, all right, it's cool to be here. And then yeah, anyways, wound up winning my class. And it was actually, I think, a 2 point difference in the overall with me and Alexis. His body was more mature than mine. He was very round, but obviously I was happy to win my pro card. I didn't care if I won the overall.
Yeah, that's wild. That's absolutely crazy. That must have been a wild experience. I couldn't imagine. Back then, shows were so heavy. They're deep, eh? 34. That's wild. What did you
Almost
understand?
every class was like that.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. What do you think you understood, at that age about training, about the process that, other guys competing maybe didn't?
Oh, well, from a young age, I mean, 15, 16, I was surrounded by guys that were on a high level. Like I worked at AJ, through bodybuilding.com. That was more so like a lifestyle thing. And then my friend Mike, who he was a competitor back then. He was a middleweight competitor. He would come and just fucking peel. He was type 1 diabetic. Met his cousin Richie in my high school who connected us together. Me and Mike started training at the Gold Gym in Brooklyn. Now they changed it to another name. Mike hooked me up with Factory, who was my first competitive coach. In that gym, we had Anthony Champagnier, Bo Baisden, got a lot of guys who come in like serious competitors in the New York scene. And plus, too, I was just a nerd. When I first got into all this, my parents thought there was something wrong with me because I was locked in my room for pretty much all day. Actually, my mom made a comment to my dad saying, hey, he's in that room all the time and there's like pictures of like half naked men on his wall. They had no idea what I was doing. They thought the worst. So he walks in. I remember this too. He's like, so what are you doing? I'm talking about diet and this and that. And then they understood what I was doing. So I mean, obviously, there was a lot of stuff I would have been done different with diet and training and PEDs, right? I mean, I had great coaches, great mentors from the very beginning, and I knew to always train harder than everybody else. Like even my first workout I ever did was legs, and I walked into that school gym and I just did it until I couldn't walk. Nobody told me that. I just thought it was the right thing. So, and obviously, we know you can only outwork people so much, right? But in for me back then, cheating on a diet was never an option. Not doing my cardio was never an option. Not training was never an option. And so from the very get go, I not only had a great support system, but I knew like you're not supposed to leave. If it's in my control, then I'm going to do it. Right.
Mhm.
I mean, there's some things that are not out of our control. So I think that's aside from genetics, I think that was one of the biggest drivers was I was consistent and I was consistent year round, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's that all in mindset that you said you have, right? You're going to go all in on everything, every account, right? And especially being in a gym, like kind of being the small fish in the pond as you come up, you're always pushed to progress. You're never that, you always have another level that you need to get to, right? So you're always moving forward, always leveling up, which is really cool.
Yeah, I was definitely the small fish in that gym, like without a doubt. It worked in my favor.
Yeah, what I was going to say is I think personally, myself, I think bodybuilding is like a pretty positive and healthy endeavor for a young man, opposed to a lot of the things, young men can get caught up in. Would you agree with that? Do you think it was healthy for you?
So
Would you put your son in that position, do you think?
no, to be honest, no. And listen, like if I no, I wouldn't. But if like he insisted, he would have to do it my way, right? Because we know there are a lot of wrong ways to go about things. And hell, I made every mistake. I made mistakes too. I've done things that I would never tell people to do. But I mean, it's also too bodybuilding's a bit different these days. But if it was my son, probably not. Just because I know the reality of that could happen, the reality that can happen with the drugs. Yes, listen, right? We can do blood work, all the scans that we want, but is it ever guaranteed that you're not going to have issues from it? You don't know until it happens, right? I know plenty of guys that were very meticulous about taking care of things and, who had heart failure or who needed a kidney transplant or even just the effect that the drugs have in the brain, right? And developing over time, you know, and that's me being very honest. I do believe humans have their choices and they should be allowed to do whatever they want, to a certain extent, but they have to understand and realize that there are risks. Like I tell everybody, no matter safe bodybuilding or what, there's always a risk. We can do everything we can to mitigate it. Uh, but is that risk worth the pot at the end of the rainbow? And unfortunately for a lot of people, there is no pot at the end of the rainbow. And this is me being completely honest. If somebody really, I would tell them go for it. But this is how you do it, and this is how it should be done. Should be done, right? So I have two answers to that in a way. I know it really doesn't hit it right on the money, but it could go both ways, right?
Yeah, well, for sure. I think the risk is inherent. All you can do is mitigate damage. I think it is a good positive pursuit. I think there is risk to it, but that's not to say, there's risk to any sport that you do. I come from I definitely got into bodybuilding at a later age, and I come from kind of an extreme sport background, like dirt biking, freestyle skiing, backcountry skiing, things like that. And those all have their risk as well. Severe bone breaks, potentially even not even making it through, right? Which is unfortunate, but everything has its risk, right? I think at the end of the day, you just got to do what you enjoy. With anything, you need to
Absolutely.
mitigate the risk as much as you can, but whether you're driving F1, bodybuilding, mountain climbing, I think they all have some inherent risk
Yeah,
along
I
with
mean,
them.
everything, and you could also do much worse things too, right?
Yeah.
Like you just said, like especially what kids could get themselves into,
Mhm.
between drugs and alcohol alone, and that's a whole nother topic. So yeah, it could definitely go both ways. Like for sure, I mean, everything has a risk, but how much is it worth to you, right? What is
Yeah.
the payout? Is
Yeah.
there what is that payout? That's what you have to figure out too, right? Like, is it
Yeah.
really going to be worth me possibly dying? How
For
much do
sure.
you really enjoy it? There are plenty of things we get into, like they say, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, I think the key is I think what I would take it with is that we've kind of been there, and at the end of the day, just, you're going to support your kid in whatever they want to do and enjoy. Yeah, like you said, I think bodybuilding, the biggest thing for bodybuilding with me is what I'd want someone young to do is because it instills so many good things, it instills structure, it instills routine. consistency, that mentality to, never give up, keep working. When you work, you see the results, right? So it instills a lot of good traits, but yeah, there's that risk side of it. So your big first pro show, 2016 New York Pro, correct? How was that?
Complete disaster. Complete disaster. Complete disaster. So, but I'm happy I did it. Uh, there was a lot I learned about it, about myself, about coaching, about the human body. And so just to give you, a rundown and your viewers a synopsis on like what happened. 6 weeks out, 7 weeks out, I was at 239 pounds. I was damn near close to ready. I started my prep like 22 weeks out because we wanted to be ready. And I probably, knowing my body, would have been on stage around 230, 235, probably 235. Because it hits a certain point where I just don't drop weight, especially as the drugs get added in. And usually I just recomp. My mom goes in, so she was dealing with cancer for 2 years. Yeah, she was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia October 5th, 2014. And she was up and down from that. Anyway, 7 weeks out from the show, she goes into a coma. They basically bombed her immune system with chemo after a bone marrow transplant without checking if she still had cancer. They assumed that her fevers were still pointing to cancer. So they basically wiped out her new bone marrow. She had no immune system left. Aspergillus was building up from her lungs into her throat. So they had to put her under. She went into septic shock. Kidneys failed. That night, she was supposed to die. She wound up lasting like 3.5 weeks. Now, mind you, every day she's going to die today. She's going to die today. Oh, she's doing better today. She's going to die today. Kidneys wound up failing. She ballooned up like 50 pounds of water retention. And but I still kept prepping. Oscar Arden, who trained me in the gym, he would meet me in Manhattan near the hospital. I lived in a closet that we found in a hospital until they found out that we were living in this closet. It took him a while, though. So he would come to Manhattan, train me, bring me my food. Every once in a while, go home, feed my dog, clean up their shit, go back. And that was, but it was long periods of staying awake. Me and my dad would rotate on and off on who would stay because we wouldn't want to leave her just with the ICU staff. So I'd stay up like 30, 34 hours at a time, just sitting in a chair. And what stress and no sleep does to the body. Around like, she was 2.5 weeks out, she passes away. By that point, my body is just like, I'm even shocked I was allowed to even continue with prep. And like 2 weeks out, I remember calling my dad. I'm like, listen, I don't think I should do this show. He goes, nope, you're going to finish what you started. I'm like, okay, cool, I'll do it. And I'm glad I did. But that peak week, I was like 230 a week out, but it wasn't a good 230, like at all. It was not, it was a very deflated, stressed look. That peak week protocol brought me down. I was at 204, 205 the day after the show. After food and water, I wasn't allowed to weigh myself. I didn't pee for like a week. Didn't pee right for a week and just dribble out. Stool, I didn't see none for like 2 weeks. Like that peak, how I was peaked is, so extreme. I don't even know how I walked away from that unscathed. So I looked absolutely horrible. I looked like I smoked crack that entire prep. But I did it. It was a great experience in somewhat of a way. I got to compete with Dexter and Ruley, Max Charles, John Morrell, John De La Rosa, Steve Kuglo. These are the guys that, I watched coming up and kind of that I looked up to as a young guy. So it was nice to have that experience. And that was it. And then I stopped bodybuilding for a while. I was coaching at the time. Stopped by, kind of went off the deep end for a while. But yeah, that was my first and only pro show. And yeah, it was not a good one. But I'm happy I did it because I followed through what I said I was going to do.
So why was that your first and only pro show?
Went off the deep end for a while, stopped bodybuilding, to be honest.
Mhm.
I was like, oh, yeah. It was all over the place for a couple of years, to put it lightly. 2018 was when I went full time with coaching. I was coaching on the side for a while. I never viewed it to be a career. I wanted to be a bodybuilder, right? But I remember late 2017, my sponsor at the time, Project AD, Joe Bindley, like, Dom, like, you should start pushing with this coaching a bit more. He goes, you're really good at it. So I did. And I wound up going full time with it a few months later, focused on that for a bit, still was in and out of bodybuilding. And that year I'm like, okay, I'm going to get back into bodybuilding. Rupture 3 discs in my lower back, needed emergency surgery. So that was time out. I had a triple discectomy. and laminectomy. I was still back and forth for a while. And then 2020, 10 days before COVID, I moved out to Vegas. I said, okay, leaving New York, leaving old stuff behind. I'm going to make a comeback. And yeah, that's, I don't know if you have any other questions to ask. It's a whole nother story after that. But yeah, those from 2016 to 2020 was just like so all over the place.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's lots to unpack there, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry you went through all that with your mom. That must have been very difficult, especially I couldn't imagine how hard it must have been in a prep just from the emotional, mental standpoint side of thing. Yeah, and I couldn't imagine, having to fight that stress into a prep, right? It's just like at this point, I would just, if I would just pull out, right? Like you can't fight that stress.
I would never tell a client to do what I did. And,
Mhm.
I didn't even tell Chris Aceto, who was my diet coach at the time, what really was like. He saw me taking check-ins in like the hospital bathroom and stuff, but I didn't tell, like, I had no appetite the entire time. I mean, my stomach was like out to here, and me, I always had a small waist, no sleeping. And I never told him, like, oh, this is what happened today. And this is how I'm just, here's my pictures, my weight, just tell me what to do next. Right. I never really was asked, nor did I never did what I never did things that weren't asked of me. You know what I'm saying? I was always just tell me what to do, and that's it. If you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. And at the time, I didn't know the things that I know now. But yeah, I would never ever tell a client to go through, what I did. That's why, knowing what goes on in somebody's personal life is important when it comes to coaching, because a lot of guys don't realize you can only bull run through, and how everybody handles stress is different, right? Somebody's, that's another thing I had to learn too. For years, I would look at people's situations and be like, that's nothing. I went through a lot worse. But, everybody handles stress in their own unique way. And you can only fight that so much. And that was another thing I learned too. It took me years later to really look back and realize, what changes went on with my body and my mind during that prep dealing with them, what held me back. So it was a very big learning experience, I mean, all around.
Yeah, that's a lot to go through, and I couldn't imagine what it was like. What did you do to rupture your discs in your back?
I honestly think it was because I wasn't training consistently. So I lost a lot of muscle,
Mhm.
only a lot of muscle, somewhat. I was squatting 700 pounds for 10 reps, deadlifting 700, well, rough around 695, wherever it was. I was a very heavy lifter. And, my entire life, I mean, I was squatting 405 at 17 years old. So I'm sure that didn't help. Did concrete most of my life. And I do believe going full time with the coaching and sitting at a desk didn't help me, because I went from being up and around and moving around to just sitting at a desk and not taking walks outside or doing anything. So then I felt it started to tighten up. And yeah, it was June 2018 where I said, okay, I need to really start training again. Like my second day in the gym, I come up on a hyperextension and I felt a crunch in my lower back, and I kind of saw some stars. And I'm like, oh, I was like, what the fuck is that? I didn't really think anything of it. The rest of the day, I was fine. The next day, I could not walk, and I'm just getting the electrical shocks from the nerve pain going down my leg. That's how it happened. I'm sure, those discs were kind of stressed from lifting like that my entire life, but also too, not really moving around and just sitting at a desk didn't help at all.
Yeah, no, desk is absolutely brutal. I would say sitting at the desk is probably by far one of the worst things you can do for your body, in an extended period of time, especially. I'm sure you have busy days where you work 10, 12 hours a day sometimes. And yeah, if you're sitting there at your desk, that's so hard on your body and going to train after it. I mean, I just picked up a bunch of nicks of injuries from that primary cause, I believe.
At thousand, because like you said, it was only a couple months after I went full time with the coaching that this happened. I've never had any injuries ever. Yeah, I trained, yeah, I always warmed up well, but it was that really did it. Like, I even look at my dad, he's 63. He's done concrete his entire life. He has a little knee problem, one leg, back gets a little tight, but he works 6, 7 days a week and still moves around. He never stops moving. What does that tell us? He doesn't even train it. He legitimately doesn't have time to train anymore, but he's still doing concrete and being active every day. And it's funny, even my shoulders, these days, they're not the best. I'm sure from being hunched over at a desk. But yeah, I mean, like if you have to stay in motion to stay healthy, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My grandpa, he's My grandpa, he's a cool dude. He's like, I think he's like 98, 99 now. I'm not even sure. I've lost track. He's old, but he's a killer. He still lives on his own, and he'll sit there for like a couple minutes. He'll chill out for something, then he'll jump right back up. He's like, yeah, I can't sit there. I'll get stuck. Right? He's always moving. Me and
See?
him like
Yeah.
dug out the foundation of my mom's house together when he was like 90 years old. He throws on his coveralls. He's down there in the trench with his shovel digging. Like, what?
You see what I'm saying? Those old school guys that don't stop working, they wind up outliving everybody, and there's still that's why, like, I worry, like, that's why I love martial arts because, is it brutal on the body? Yeah, sure, but it keeps me moving, when I'm still when I'm have a consistent routine, I'm actively training other than sitting at a damn desk. I mean, sometimes it's just, how it is. You sit there for a long day, you try to get up, and everything's just so fucking tight, and that adds up.
Hmm. So, was there a mental health, like challenging aspect side of things when you kind of stepped away from bodybuilding? And I know that's, a big topic in general space now, and especially in bodybuilding, it's being brought up a lot more and more. What was that like for you?
You're talking about after the New York Pro or after the mercury poisoning? Like
Wow.
stepping away in what way?
Well, let's walk through that a bit. Let's walk through that a bit. So, how did you get diagnosed with mercury poisoning? How did you find that all out? What coach were you working with at the time?
I wasn't working with anybody at the time.
Okay.
No, so I moved to Vegas, and I started having, like, gut issues months before, diarrhea, bloating, because, again, back then, nobody really spoke about that stuff, so I didn't really think anything of it. Moved there, they get worse. Then the mental issues came on. I mean, talking about suicide ideation to the max. Joint issues, memory issues, speech issues. I remember stuttering a lot back then. Couldn't keep weight on. Like for me to put muscle on, it was always pretty damn easy. I had every issue you could imagine. And for about like 10 months, 9 months, I would go see a gastro doctor and just regular doctors. I remember, one doctor was basically, this was when I lived in Vegas. He goes, have you ever thought about, seeking some, mental help, some psychological help? Maybe these things are in your head. I'm like, it's not in my head. I'm like, I know there's something wrong here. Now, mind you, back then I was a big sushi eater my whole life. I was good for about 40 to 60 pieces a clip, 2 to 3 times a week. And when I moved to Vegas, I was doing the tuna flavored tuna packs, 12 ounces at a time. Should have known it back then. I didn't. Nobody's spoken about it. I did it. So I was just making it worse. And it wasn't until Flex Lewis gave me a functional medicine practitioner out of Canada. I think his name was Roland. And he sent me for the Genova testing. And I think my mercury's like 50 times over the limit. We did stool, urine, and bloods. It was like 50 times over, and that's when he was like, "Yeah, this is not good." And his guidance on it wasn't aggressive enough. Do you remember Jason Ha? So Jason retired for the same thing. So I didn't have a relationship with Jason. I didn't know him well. I just contacted him on Instagram and say, "Hey, dude, like, we've never spoken before. This is what I'm dealing with. I remember seeing you dealt with the same thing. Can you offer me any guidance on this?" He said, "Yeah, call me." So we on the phone for like an hour. I honestly believe like he saved my life. He was, you need to find a functional medicine practitioner in Vegas that does IV chelation. You need to go get the MPS once a week, even twice a week. EDTA chelation on top. So when I went to this doctor, they didn't really offer the DMPS, but they ordered it for me. So I'll go once a week, get the DMPS IV on top of the fluids. They would do acupuncture and ozone therapy. And then I did cycles of EDTA. I think it was like 4 weeks on, 1 week off. I forgot what it was. It was years back. Did that for like 8 months. December, they checked my mercury levels after a challenge test. They were pretty low. Now, of course, there's always going to be some in there because it stores in the brain, stores in the tissue, stores in the organs. I felt pretty good. Started bodybuilding again. Went up to like the highest I got was like 298 within like 2 months. But after like 5 or 6 months of that, I just couldn't handle it. Like even Jason warned me, he's like, I'm gonna like forewarn you right now, you're probably not gonna be able to take PEDs again from this, what this has done to your CNS system. I thought I was gonna be different. Like I felt absolutely horrible, awful. And that was the reason why I had to walk away from bodybuilding. I spent 50 to $60,000 looking for answers and then the treatments to try to make myself better to get back. And I did everything I possibly could. And I did try to actively come back. I mean, I got big again. I did everything I was supposed to do, but it was not good for my body whatsoever. Like I felt like exactly what he told me was going to happen happened. And that's
And
June.
that comeback was guided by Flex Lewis, correct?
No, no, we were training partners. We were training
Okay,
partners. Yeah, he's a
got
good
you.
friend of mine. He was training for his open comeback, which his body didn't allow to. I was going to come back. Who was I working with? I wasn't working with anybody. I was doing my
Yeah,
own
so you're just
nutrition.
training with them.
Yeah, just train. I was doing my own nutrition, and I was actually going to link up with Neil Hill. And then that was like 2 weeks after. I'm like, Neil, I can't. I'm like, I've been
No,
trying this for months. I'm like, I didn't really tell you the reality of it. So yeah, so during like the comeback, I did it on my own.
got you.
Who I kind of knew what to do anyway. You know what I'm saying? So it was so simple. Just get big again and try to stay healthy. So yeah, that was on my own.
So what would have happened if that call with Jason never happened?
I mean, who knows, right?
Burn more money, I guess.
Burn more money or possible death. I mean, you get mercury poison enough, you could die. I
So
mean,
can you
that's why
give a little
they.
bit of insight on mercury poisoning, how people can kind of mitigate that risk and what
Okay,
causes
so
it?
there's different ways you can get it. Like I got it through eating fish. You can get it by being exposed to it, like the old thermometers or certain light bulbs or whatever thing. Even supplements can contain mercury in it as well. Like we see like heavy metal testing across the board, these supplement company lead, arsenic, like it's not spoken about enough. And it's funny, Muscle and Fitness actually did an article when they found out about my story. And I remember getting so many men and Dave Plumbarks must remember getting so many messages about people talking about health issues. I'm like, go get your heavy metals tested. And the amount of people that came back with elevated levels of mercury and, they were having thyroid issues, gut issues that nobody could explain. But, we know the damage that heavy metals do, especially in this country between our food, supplements, everyday products that we use. Uh, Even that doctor in Vegas that I was working with for the chelation therapy, he sat with me and pulled up his statistics for the World Health Organization. I know not the most reputable, but they did have some good statistics. In 1993, 1992, they started adding in not methyl mercury, I forgot what type of mercury it is, to vaccines as a preservative to make them last longer. Well, from 1993 on, the amount of autism and Down syndrome was climbing ever since. And you can look this up for yourself. Like people, the FDA, they all claim like, oh, that amount of mercury can't, harm you. So why was it added in 1992? What was the reason if we were doing fine before that? Mercury is not good for you. It lasts in your body forever, especially the ones that they add in vaccines. There are people that are born, these babies are injected with this shit, and then it stays in your tissues pretty much forever. And then of course there are, genes where that don't allow people to detox mercury efficiently. There are some people that you look at guys in prisons, right? They eat tuna every day for years on end. They don't ever get any effect. And then there are some people that can't. Um, so it really depends on the case. Mine was fish. Pretty much all our fish is poisoned in some way. It's mainly the bigger fish that live for longer periods of time. So, like salmon is okay, shellfish is okay. You just have to worry about the other crap that shellfish eats. Tuna, yellowtail, things of that nature. People think, oh, tilapia is so bad for you. Yeah, sure, it's a farm fish, but usually they don't have mercury in it. It's all the other crap that they, have. So it sucks because there's a lot of people that go and eat tuna and yellowtail and some of these other fish, dolphin, mahi mahi. They go eat it thinking they're making a good choice. Really, they're just poisoning themselves. And then it depends on the person's individual tolerance. There is a very fine line when it comes to that poisoning threshold. And once you're over it, you're over it. And that has to be chelated out in some way. And not just chelated, detox properly as well. You can't just chelate things and hope it comes out. If you're not able to detox them efficiently through your liver and kidneys, it's just going to recirculate back around. And that's something I dealt with too during the therapy that I was warned about by Jason. When they would do the IV of DMPS, it basically pulls chelate, I believe is Greek or Latin, whatever. English translation is claw. So it pulls these metals out of your brain, your skin, tries to circulate it through the body, and so it could be excreted out. Now, there's always some leftovers that get recirculated back in. So there were times like I felt really wired, and that wasn't a good thing. That was my central nervous system becoming wacky from the reabsorption of some of these heavy metals. And it's not just mercury. Like lead has become a big thing. Like even in a lot of baby clothing coming from China, in the print, like in the graphics they have on their clothing, contains high amounts of lead. Our food, our supplements, like we're seeing it rise. So it's not just mercury, heavy metals as a whole is kind of destroying society. And there isn't really any guidelines or really any system governing this, at least in this country, for the amount of heavy metals that are put into products. Now, in Europe, there is, for the most part, aside from their fish, it's kind of just free game to do whatever you want in this country when it comes to heavy metals. Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of just ranting on here.
It's
It's a whole.
okay. Yeah, there's
I
no
could keep
really.
going.
That's a big one. I know a big supplement that everyone rants and raves about is greens powder, but it's one of the most highest in heavy metal supplements, and most greens powder tests very high in heavy metals.
Even protein powders as well. A lot of vitamins, which you coffee and water. Everybody thinks they're doing something good, but a lot of these companies don't even test.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I saw an Instagram reel the other day talking about, I think, polyester underwear and how it can affect women's hormones and male hormones actually too, which is pretty crazy. I think they tested it on dogs and they found out it affected their estrogen, progesterone, which is absolutely wild. And most people wearing like leggings, polyester leggings, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
mean, it's pretty hard to avoid nowadays in our unnatural world to mitigate all the toxins that we intake. I guess all you can do is just try and live as healthy as you possibly can.
And try not to use plastics. I remember it was back in 2013 or 2012. Vincent DePonte's dad was going through cancer. And he went down this rabbit hole of plastics, and people thought he was nuts. They thought he was fucking kooky. Even back then, I'm like, why wouldn't you? It's a cup. Like, here, you have a plastic cup, right? He was
Mm-hmm.
only using glass cups, glass Tupperwares for everything. He was very careful about what he put in his body. Well, turned out to be true. So,
Mm-hmm.
now we have these plastics and heavy metals, and then not even counting all the stuff that they're spraying on our foods and that they're putting in the animals before we eat it. This stuff doesn't go on in other countries. Have you ever visited Europe before?
No, I haven't.
So I spent quite some time in Germany years back, and it was actually right a few months before I moved to Vegas. I remember eating there and breads, pastas, cold cuts, shit here. Like, oh my God, like I can't eat. Like I was able to eat whatever I wanted and I had no stomach issues whatsoever. I felt better. My skin, even when I have clients go to Europe and spend some time there and they come back, it's like, oh my God, my stomach was so good there. As soon as I started eating here, like our country is being poisoned. They could claim they don't do it on purpose. I have other thoughts about that. But it's funny that how in other countries these things are regulated and we don't see a lot of the issues here in other countries like we do here, you know?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I live in Canada. We have a bit different regulations in terms of food and stuff. I know our ingredients are somewhat different. One really irritating thing here is, Health Canada's restrictions on a lot of natural vitamins and supplements is absolutely ridiculous. At least you guys have some pretty good access there. But talking about, European food, I just had an off-plan meal I made at home the other night, made pasta and some chorizo, just whipped up a quick pasta at home. But I go down to the Italian deli, the Italian market, and I get imported Italian pasta, right? Because then it has lower glyphosates and all that junk on it. And you definitely notice a difference. It just digests so much better. Not to mention it's so much more enjoyable. But yeah.
Even the taste of it is
Yeah.
way different than what we have here. I remember just tasting the foods and be like, oh my God, like the fruit, what was it, a few years ago, I was in Mexico. We were in some small town right outside of Cabo and remember eating just the fruits. I'm like, holy shit, this is how it should taste. It's a shame, because
Mhm.
you're fighting an uphill battle with most people with this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I know there is different regulations in terms of, spraying crops and things like that from country to country. But I've worked on a big agricultural farm as a farmhand, farming 15,000 acres. Yeah, one of the primary jobs of farm is, applying spray to crops, and that's a That's a whole wild experience, taking all these chemicals, mixing them together, putting them in the machines like the
Yeah.
sprayers, and they drive the field, spray the crops. Like chickpeas is one of the worst. They spray it like 8 or 10 times a season. It's just a
Mhm.
really temperamental crop, but yeah, it's absolutely wild to see a crop get sprayed that many times in a season, and then you're eating that.
Now, from your experience, why are they spraying it so much? What's the goal of spraying it so much from your experience?
Yeah, it's just to ensure a good crop, clean crop, weed don't take over, things like that. But I think I'm not highly educated on that side of things, but I've heard a lot of people speak about it. And I think that nothing really grows in these fields without these sprays. It's like they're dead fields, right? Like the soil's dead from all the spray. They don't carry nutrients anymore. But farming at an organic scale for the whole world is really it's not viable. It's
Right.
not sustainable, right? It's just not going to happen.
Right.
We can't produce that. Maybe if people had small communities and monocrops and things like that, but yeah, nothing lives except the crop. Those crops are genetically grown to withstand the chemical sprays. That's why they survive, and nothing else lives, right? Yeah, it's a crazy process. It's a crazy thing to experience. I'm not going to be a whistleblower or anything, but I've seen some things that I was definitely not cool with. So I'll just
I'm
say that.
sure.
Yeah. Just like how they dispose of chemicals, get rid of things like that. All those chemicals have to be, transported some way. They all come in containers, all that stuff has to be disposed. It's just, what are we doing? It kills everything except the crop, and then we eat it. Okay, great.
Sounds like a solid system to me.
It sounds like a good plan, right? So on
Solid
the let's
system.
get back to the mental health aspect side of things. So I know the mercury probably was, it had its side effects, you said, mentally, but did you have any, was it hard to leave bodybuilding, or was it easy because you had that coaching to fall back on?
Yes and no. So I had the day I decided I was done, I listed out the pros of continuing the cons, and the cons far outweighed the pros. So I made short term and long term goals in my coaching, hit all those within 10 months, but also I needed something else to get into. So I started doing jujitsu. I was 200 and I was realized that how bad I was and how my cardio didn't allow me to go past 10 seconds. I'm like, okay, I need to get good at this. And then, long story short, it turned into Muay Thai and kickboxing and wrestling. And I competed twice in jiu-jitsu, hopeful to compete this year in MMA. So having different outlets made it a lot easier, but I did struggle with it for the first, I guess I would say 10 months. Cause to have to sit with the reality that I would never win a New York Pro, I would never go to the Arnold, I would never go to Olympia, something that I dedicated my entire life to, mentally, physically, health wise, financially, like everything. It was a little tough, but also too, like I would immediately shift back to being like, hey, like you have all these other goals, you have to still stay on it. And eventually I came to peace with it. Like I don't miss it at all because I'm very fortunate to be in the situation I'm in. I'm healthy. My business is absolutely amazing. I'm able to serve people at a much higher level. Flex even made a comment to me. He was like, "You're not going to be able to coach at the level you want to coach at and be a top Olympian. You know that, right?" And I remember looking at him, I'm like, "I could do it," but he was absolutely right, and he's not wrong. It's either one or the other for the most part, and something is going to take a hit. So I went all in. I went all in on my coaching. I went all in with my own competitive goals, getting healthy. It did take time to come to terms. It did take time to fully come to terms with. But yeah, no, it was a lot easier than you would have thought. I mean, they're going back to the New York Pro. I walked away. I didn't really walk away. I never said I was done bodybuilding. I just went off the deep end. I never realized how much, what I witnessed and like what I saw and went through, seeing what my family went through and the house burning down. And, when you watch your mother pretty much decay while she's alive and then watch her die a horrific death, I didn't realize how much that affected me until I actually had to get help. And then it took me a few years to kind of work on that, drinking heavily. I'm going to be totally honest. It was kind of numbing that pain, but I always said I wasn't done bodybuilding, right? It just took me a bit to kind of get myself out of that funk and say, okay, time to turn a new leaf and get back into it. So there were two sides to it, right? There
Mm.
were the side that after the New York Pro, where it wasn't my intention, it just happened. and I just, went out of control due to my own choices, because it was still a choice, right? There's no justifying it. Some people would say, "Oh, you went through a lot." No, dude, it was my choice, right? Regardless if I was doing it intentionally or not, at the end of the day, it was still a choice, and I had to have known what I was doing. And then there was the fact where I had to leave because of the mercury poisoning. And at that point, it was like didn't want me to bodybuild, and it took me a while to kind of realize that, and to realize I had a much bigger plan for my life. And I'm very happy it happened. Now, if you say, like, if you could have redid things, I wouldn't redo anything.
Hmm.
I would not. I would not redo anything. If you could say, oh, if you could do everything different and still, go to Olympia, and no, it happened
Hmm.
exactly how it was supposed to happen. I'm in the place I'm in today because of exactly everything, even all the bad shit that happened. It led me to the path I'm at today. So, I struggled for a bit, but you take your lumps, you learn from it, and you move on.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, a bit of a shift in identity, find a new passion to go all in on, makes an easy shift. Right? Plus, you found a new calling, right? You found something where you can serve other people, help other people, and become their best self. Best.
It's a much greater calling, right? I used to be so focused on getting competitors to the stage and what pro wins. The last few years, it's been how many people can I impact and change, either it be a health or whatever it is. I tell people, I don't care what your goal is. My attention to you does not change if you're a competitor or non-competitor. And it's very gratifying to see
Hmm.
somebody reach that goal and be able to sustain it, and, possibly save somebody's life with health issues that they couldn't get a fix anywhere else. You know how the doctor systems work.
Yeah,
Western medicine is complete shit for the most part. You
yeah.
know, and that's another thing I learned, seeing my mom go through all her treatments and see how doctors treated her, and, you know, their view on nutrition, which was none at all. So, yeah, so my calling definitely became a lot less selfish, because bodybuilding is selfish at the end of the day, regardless of whatever way we want to put it. But you kind of have to be, right? You're competing by yourself. It's only you up on stage. People are looking at you. So it had to take a complete change in identity for me to really catapult myself to that next portion of life that, I'm in now.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a big shift. Big selfish endeavor to a pretty selfless endeavor, right? I mean, coaching ain't easy, and that's what probably Flex was kind of hinting on. I think a lot of people see that too. They see online coaches and stuff now. I can tell you, the good quality coaches out there, they're working hard. Like, it's not an easy job, right?
No,
So
it's
yeah, my
not like
man.
people think. Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
people think they just post online, DM me for coaching, and that's the end of it. When you're fully invested and you know what you're doing, and people are investing in you as a coach, people are trusting you with their hard-earned money and their time and their health, and that's a very big thing and something people shouldn't take lightly. And then when you take it on, no, it's not all sunshines and rainbows and collecting checks and Venmos.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of weight on your shoulders, right? You got to serve these people. I mean, that's what you came here for, right?
That's
But
right.
either way, Dom, I appreciate having you on. I know we're both kind of a little pressed for time here. We both got some things going on this afternoon, but it's been absolutely amazing having you on. I've wanted to chat with you in person for a long time. Been a big fan of you and your coaching. Everything you do in this space is absolutely phenomenal.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so much for coming on, my man. If anybody wants to find you, I will drop the link in the show notes, but where can they find you, Dom?
Instagram, Dom Cardone IFBB, DOMCARDONEIFBB on Instagram. So yeah, just follow me on there. I could use it since Meta's got me in the shower. So throw me following, some likes from there.
Yeah, no doubt. Sounds good. Well, I appreciate y'all tuning in.
Thank
And
you.
like I said, I'll drop the links in the show notes and we'll see y'all soon.